Good evening. So here's for the first chapter of my book, War in Peace. If you haven't been following, released in 2012, but my story of my 9 years, some people say 10 years, but it was actually 9 years, with the riot unit and then the internal stability division, which was pretty much the same function, on the East Rand, Transvaal, South Africa. From 1986 to 1994, so the last years of apartheid, and this is kind of an eye-opener as to what was going on in the country at the time. So the videos are actually being split up into 15-minute videos. YouTube won't let me upload longer videos than that. So if it goes longer than 15 minutes, then just check the channel and there should be another video there for the second half or the third half. Okay, cool. So here we go. This chapter is called Starting Off, 1986. There I stood with my long blonde hair, denim jacket, Lee jeans, basketball shoes, and a sports bag containing everything I owned. I was ready to start my 6 months of basic training in the South African police force. At the police college in Pretoria, I was unaware that in 1984, the ANC had instructed its followers to make the country ungovernable and unleash violence on the security forces. I didn't get the memo about the dress code, and I arrived in a denim jacket, dressed like a hillbilly, when I was supposed to arrive in a suit and tie. Not a good start, clearly. The drill sergeant, screaming non-stop in my ear, made that quite clear. And I hadn't even started the training yet. I was also English speaking, which did not go down well with the predominantly Afrikaner grouping of the police college. I looked and was a carefree kid. But that was not the right image to portray on my first day of basic training. No free thinking allowed here. Ask anyone who has been in any kind of military outfit, and I'm sure they'll tell you the same and agree. They'll say, that's not good, probably with a smirk on their face. However, my bad attitude and free thinking would be my greatest asset in the years to come. It would keep me sane, but that's also debatable, whether I'm sane or not. We were lined up and allocated to different platoons and companies. Everyone there had heard the rumors and that you didn't want to get selected for platoon 13 in Charlie Company. Unlucky 13 was the outfit you didn't want to end up in. It was known to be reserved for those who arrived with some kind of questionable record or questionable history, or who turned up in jeans. The platoon sergeant, Sergeant Pelser, had a really bad reputation amongst the new recruits. We found out even on our first day. He was also the guy who was posting the new recruits to the various platoons. He stood there with a smug look on his chubby baby face. His tatty excuse for a moustache dangled under his pug nose. I'm being very critical of the guy here. If I had to write the book again, I'd probably change that part. But it's the way I felt at the time, and I'm sure a lot of you did who were in the police or in the service. He took one look at me and his beady little eyes and pointed to a group of sorry-ass motherfuckers who were the beginnings of platoon 13. I looked at it and said, shit. I strolled over to them and stood to one side. None of us were quite sure what to make of each other. We stood around waiting for the rest of the recruits to fall into their platoon. Sergeant Pelser came over and told us to form up. We didn't have a clue what he meant. He explained by grabbing one of us by the arm and shoving him into position. Marker, 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 marker. He shouted in authoritarian drill sergeant tones while indicating that the ragdoll in his right hand was the marker. Fall in your fucking marker. Whether you understood the language or not, you knew if you didn't obey the command, you were toast. Everybody ran and stood where they thought they should. I followed. I was totally disorganized and very messy. Sak fucking grond toe, julle fucking dose. Fall to the fucking ground, you fucking twats. The English. Translation. You're going to love the Afrikaans language if you don't know it. We did. And our first opfok, punishment, of the long 6 months that lay ahead of us started right there. We were run off our feet all the way to the bungalow, doing push-ups, sit-ups, jackknives, and marking time. The other guys were pretty fucked by the time we got to our sleeping quarters. I wasn't that tired, as I was really fit. We settled in and began packing our stuff into cupboards. I wasn't particularly a big person for a 17-year-old, but I knew I had to make my mark ASAP to set my future defense and earn some kind of respect. So that's what I did, and there were an abundance of opportunities for doing it. I was already missing my girlfriend Marina, who had secretly left a 5 Rand note, which was like R1,000,000 back in those days, in my bag, and a little card that had the scent of her perfume on it. It had a sweet message about how much she loved me and was already missing me. When the reality hit me that I still had the worst possible full 6 months ahead of me, it was a really crap moment, like really crap. There were 36 recruits in each platoon. In mine, only 3 were English speaking. Some of the Afrikaners had a twisted idea that they were better than me. The English speaking Soutpil or Soti, Saltdik, according to Afrikaners, a guy with 1 foot in South Africa and 1 other foot in England with his dick hanging in the sea. They call him a Saltdik, Soutpil. Just because Afrikaners ran the country. But there were some scummy types, although most of us got along really well. I had grown up with Afrikaans friends, so I knew their culture and our differences. I also knew this could lead to trouble. Some guys were really confident and aggressive. None of us had yet learned that when bullets begin to fly, nobody gives a damn what language you speak, what color you are, or where you come from. But since we hadn't been close to any action in our young lives, it didn't occur to us that we were on the same side and were supposed to be friends who would have to depend on one another. That night, some idiot from the Free State bounced his tennis ball across my newly polished floor and stomped his muddy feet right next to my bed. He had got the idea that he was going to push me around from the start. In his twisted mind, we English speakers were not part of his supreme race. I grabbed the only chance I was going to get. I leapt up and hit him square in the jaw, sending him backwards over a bed. And that was that. Instantly, I had the respect of everybody in the platoon. It wouldn't be my last confrontation in the college, but it certainly cancelled out a few that would otherwise have happened. As I mentioned, I was extremely fit, so I had no problem with physical training and any other strenuous activity. This annoyed the instructors. There was nothing they could do to me that achieved the desired effect, which was to work me into the ground. One day, I was caught walking in the college grounds. Walking was not allowed. We had to double time everywhere we went. I saw the instructor who caught me and had already swallowed a few drops, brandies, and he was going to try to fuck me over with some instant PT. He ordered me to run around the athletics track while he stood there sipping on his bottle. It just happened that I was already on my way there to do some training anyway. So I started running, and I ran, and I ran, and I ran, and I ran. A little bit like Forrest Gump. By the time the instructor had finished his drink, he was really bored and thoroughly pissed off with me. He ordered me to go to my bungalow and stomped off to the instructor's pub. The sergeants soon realized there was nothing that they could do that would tire me out. But that didn't stop them from trying, I can promise you that. And it wasn't entirely true. There was a few times where I was pretty fucked. Every now and then, some asswipe in our platoon would try his luck with me. I was obviously easy meat because I was English speaking and didn't have much support. One evening, I was walking around the middle of the middle passage. of our bungalow, which was taboo as it was kept polished and shiny, and no one was allowed to walk on it. One of the recruits saw me coming and moved his bed into the way so I couldn't get past. This particular guy had national colors for wrestling and was a known bully. But I was up for it. I knocked his hand so that he lost his grip on the bed, toppled over, and all his kit tumbled from the bed onto the floor. He lost his cool and came storming at me uncontrollably. I hooked him again, square in the jaw with a well-timed right hook. He stood there in a bit of a daze, but recovered quickly and went to wrestle me instead of box. He ran at me, grabbed me around the waist, picked me up, and threw me over backwards. He was as strong as an ox, but I managed to get him in a headlock. And I held on there for dear life. I tumbled over backwards, hanging onto his neck, and tightened my grip. I was on my back with him on top of me, but I still had him in a solid headlock. I started to twist his neck, and I felt it click. "I'll break your fucking neck, Lenny." His name was Lenny. I muttered as I turned up the juice on my grip. I could actually feel his mind change right there and then. He had to decide whether he wanted a broken neck or to be embarrassed in front of the platoon. Luckily, he opted for the latter. Okay, loss. Let go. Everybody in the bungalow burst out laughing simultaneously. By then, they all knew not to fuck with me. I must say, I surprised myself too, because I wasn't really a violent type, although I grew up in Nigel, where we did fight a lot. A few weeks later, our platoon and some of the others were shipped off to Verdrag training camp. This was a riot unit base near a little town called Tabazimbi in the northern province. The scenery was absolutely breathtaking. The base itself was a little less impressive. It was a cluster of prefab houses with a military type open air theme. The decor was bland and inartistic, if you could call it decor at all. It was immediately apparent that the base was not built for comfort, which particularly applied to the beds. The base was surrounded by thick bushveld. There was quite a scary history to the camp. The original farm had belonged to a collector of venomous snakes, including many exotic varieties from foreign parts of the world. It was said that when he sold his farm to the police, he had freed thousands of deadly reptiles, and they slithered off into the surrounding bushveld, and I'm shit scared of snakes. As far as I know, the story is true and not just a scary myth to frighten new recruits. There were also other dangerous wild animals in the surrounding hills, such as hyenas, leopards, and baboons. I never saw any, but I definitely heard them. On our first evening there, we were all issued with aluminium varkpanna pig trays for eating from. I wondered what delicious treats awaited us at the dining quarters. Would it be escargot starter, followed by rump sirloin, with a side order of spinach and French fries, maybe a lovely pavlova for dessert,